She made her promise before she died. 2 words. Just 2 words. Save him. And Princess Anne carried those 2 words, and everything that came with them, alone for 29 years. Waiting. Watching. Keeping her promise exactly the way Diana asked her to. Until the moment finally arrived when she picked up the phone and called Harry in California. And what happened on that call? What Anne said, what Harry heard, what Diana had been carrying to her grave for nearly 3 decades, broke him completely. And it may have changed everything. Welcome to Royal Report Daily, your most trusted source for breaking royal news and exclusive investigations. Tonight we are covering the story that connects Diana's final days, Anne's decades of silence, and Harry's breakdown on a California phone call into one of the most extraordinary and heartbreaking royal revelations we have ever reported. This is not a story about titles or legal battles or PR strategies. This is a story about a mother, her sons, and the words she never got to say. Don't forget to subscribe to Royal Report Daily and hit that notification bell so you never miss a single update. The phone rang in Harry's house in California. He almost did not pick it up. He had been having one of those days where everything felt like too much. The stories about his marriage, his exit from the royal family, were everywhere, and there was nothing he could do about any of it. He managed to pick up the phone and heard his aunt's voice. Something in his chest shifted immediately. "Harry, we need to talk," Anne said right away. She told him she had been holding something for him for a very long time. "You will need to be strong for this. Can I count on that?" Harry's heart raced as he managed to say yes. What she said next hit him like something physical. Stay tuned to Royal Report Daily. We bring you the stories that matter. There was something horrifying, something that killed Diana every single day, that she had never told her son. It all began after the divorce. Inside Kensington Palace, the marriage was over. The institution had turned its back on her. The walls of that enormous palace closed in tighter every single day. Diana felt like she was drowning. And in the middle of all of that, she had leaned on Harry, her youngest, her boy. She had let him sit beside her in the evenings when she could not hold herself together. She had let him climb into her lap when the crying came. She had let him press his small back against hers in the dark and tell her in that small, serious voice that everything was going to be fine, Mama. She had taken a child who was barely old enough to understand what divorce meant and made him the person who held her together when no one else could. And she went to her grave believing she had broken something in him because of it. She had rehearsed the words 1,000 times. She wanted to sit across from him, take his hands, look him directly in the eye and say, "That was never your burden. You were my child. I was supposed to hold you together, not the other way around." But she never found the right moment. And then the tunnel in Paris happened, and there were no more moments left. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to Royal Report Daily for more exclusive investigations. As Anne spoke, Harry remembered every single one of those evenings. He remembered Diana pulling him hard against her and crying into his hair. He remembered pressing himself against her as hard as his small body could manage, as if he could physically hold the pieces of her in place. Diana had gone to the grave with guilt, thinking she had traumatized her son. But hearing Anne speak now, Harry thought the opposite. His mother had taught him strength. He had learned from her pain. If she were here now, he would have told her it was fine. Those evenings were not a burden. He had never once resented a single second of any of it. Not 1 second. But she died believing she had damaged him. He had absolutely no idea that his mother needed him to say one simple thing to set her free. That was what shattered him completely. Then, Anne told him what Diana had said about William. And this was the part that reframed everything. Diana had watched her 2 boys fight their entire childhood. Furious, physical fights. One fight over a baseball had been so intense that Diana had run downstairs to call palace guards when she could not separate them. That fight left William with a broken lip. But Diana had noticed something that never changed. No matter how bad the fight was, William always came back first. He was always the first to say, "I am sorry, Harry. We should not fight. We are brothers." He had been doing that since they were barely old enough to walk. But Diana was terrified of one specific thing. She admitted to, and that one day William might simply run out of the capacity to be the one who came to Harry first. And if that day ever came, William might not come back first. And Harry, her fierce and completely unbreakable Harry, would never go first himself. He did not have that in him. And the silence between them would grow into something vast and cold that neither of them could find their way back across no matter how desperately they wanted to. Don't miss a single update. Subscribe to Royal Report Daily right now. Then, and described one specific night. And Harry went completely still. He had been very young, burning with fever at Kensington Palace. His small body shook so violently the bed moved with him. Diana had sent for the doctor. But William did not wait for anyone. He climbed directly into Harry's bed and pulled his little brother hard against his chest. Harry's skin was scorching. William held him tighter. He pressed his face right against Harry's ear and said in a fierce, low voice, "Stay with me. Just stay with me." He pulled the blanket around both of them and held Harry's burning, shaking body through the entire night without closing his eyes once. Every time Harry stirred, William tightened his grip and said it again. "Stay with me." Diana stood in the doorway of that bedroom and watched her two boys. And she understood in that moment exactly what they were to each other underneath everything the world would eventually do to them. If the day ever came when the silence between them had grown too wide and Harry could not find his way back across it, she wanted him to remember that night. She wanted him to remember that William held him when he was burning, that his brother refused to let go even for one single second. And then she said the line that stopped Harry cold on that phone call. William would be the one to come back, even after everything, even after whatever the world threw at the two of them. He would come back first. But Harry had to still be reachable when he did. Subscribe to Royal Report Daily and stay ahead of every royal development. When Harry finally managed to breathe again and told him there was something else, something Diana had said about his father. She said Harry would go looking for his father one day. He would go looking for warmth, for a man who would look him in the eye and say, "I see exactly who you are, and I am proud of every inch of it." But that was never what he was going to find. He was going to search for his father and find a king instead, a man so completely hollowed out by duty and institution and the relentless performance of royal life that he had nothing real left to give a son who needed something real more than he needed anything else in the world. Diana did not say it with bitterness. She said it with a grief that was almost unbearable to sit with. She was standing in 1997 watching a future she could already see clearly, and she was heartbroken by every detail of it. Harry could not speak for a long time after that. When his voice finally came back, it was completely destroyed. He asked, and just one question. He asked her why she had waited so long to tell him all of this, and said she would answer that. But she had a few more things to tell him first. Hit that like button and subscribe to Royal Report Daily right now. There was something else Diana had said that summer at Balmoral, and it did not sound like a mother worrying about her son. It sounded like a woman who had already lived through everything this family was capable of, who had already felt every blow, who already knew exactly how the story ended, and who was quietly warning someone she loved before it was too late. Diana told, and that Harry was not built for this family. Harry felt too much. He felt rejection too deeply. He felt betrayal too personally. He felt love too completely. He could not detach the way the palace needed him to. He could not smile through pain the way they trained you to. His heart stayed wide open. And in a place like this one, that is the most dangerous thing you can be. The palace would spend his entire life trying to grind that out of him. It would try to make him quieter, smaller, more manageable, more useful, more contained. And it would never work. Because Harry was not built to be managed. He was built to feel. But Diana also told, and something harder. She said Harry's greatest weakness was the same as his greatest strength. He felt everything so deeply that when he was wounded, he could become someone who wounded back. He could be impulsive. He could burn things down in pain that deserved more patience. Diana loved him completely, and she saw that clearly. Then Diana said the thing that made Anne's blood run cold when she first heard it and had never fully warmed since. She said Harry would fall in love one day with someone who gave love without conditions. And the moment that happened, this family would call her a threat. They would pick her apart before she had done a single thing wrong. Diana was completely still when she said this. She was describing something she had already bled through herself. Then, and told Harry that Diana grabbed her arm before she finished. She wanted to make sure and heard every word. She said that when that moment came for Harry, he needed to know his mother would have stood right beside him without hesitation. Then she looked at and said quietly, "I only hope he does it for a woman who truly loves his heart. And I hope he loves her wisely. Because Harry in love is Harry with no breaks." Royal Report Daily, bringing you the truth behind every royal headline. Then Harry asked the question he had been carrying since the beginning of the call. Why didn't wait? Why now? When it felt as if the worst had already happened, and had only been keeping her promise and following instructions. Diana had specifically told, and do not give him my words as comfort. Do not deliver them when life is manageable or when he seems to have found solid ground. Give them to him when the palace has already tried to break him. Give them to him when he has made every choice I was afraid he would have to make and paid every price I knew would come with those choices. Give them to him when he is still standing on the other side of all of it. Because that is when he will need to know that what he felt about this family was always true. That he saw everything with complete clarity. That it cost him everything, and he was right anyway. And then told him what she had watched happen to him. She watched him stand in a UK courtroom and lose the security case. She watched his formal HRH designation quietly scrubbed from updated palace documents without a single conversation. The pain driving him was real. Nobody who knew Harry doubted that. But Diana had warned him about this too. Harry wounded was not Harry who retreated quietly and healed. Harry wounded picked up whatever was nearest and swung it. He went public. He named names. He dragged people into headlines without stopping to measure the damage he was leaving behind. He did not just burn the bridge. He stood on it while it was on fire and kept pouring fuel. And the people left choking in the smoke were the same family Diana had spent her whole life trying to survive. Don't miss a single update. Subscribe to Royal Report Daily right now. Before and gave Harry the last thing Diana said. She needed him to understand something first. She needed him to go back to who he actually was, to his mother, before the world got its hands on him. Diana had never forgotten a specific moment. Sometime in the months before that final summer of 1997, Harry was 13 years old. He pulled her aside one evening very quietly and asked her something in a voice so careful and so small that it stopped her breathing completely. He asked her whether she thought the family actually loved her. Diana stood there and looked at her 13-year-old son and saw herself staring back. He was 13 years old, and he already understood more about that family than men who had spent their entire lives inside it. That was not a gift. That was a wound. No child should see that clearly that young. That level of clarity cost him something it could never give back. It cost him the ability to pretend. And inside that family, the inability to pretend was the most dangerous thing a person could be. Then, and reminded Harry about the things he and his mother used to do together, the ones no camera ever caught. Diana used to take him to hospices, AIDS wards, homeless shelters. Not William. Harry specifically. Just the two of them. No cameras, no announcements. The first time Harry was very young and terrified. He stood just inside the doorway of a hospice ward, and his legs refused to carry him any further. The room was lined with beds, and the people in them had the look of those the world had already finished with and moved on from. Diana did not pull him forward. She stood right beside him and waited without saying a single word. Then she took his hand and walked him slowly down the row. Halfway down the ward, a small girl was sitting up in her bed. She was 4 years old. She had AIDS. She looked up at Harry with enormous dark eyes and said absolutely nothing. Just looked at him steadily, like she had been waiting a long time for someone to come and actually look back. Diana stopped. She took Harry's hand and placed it very gently onto the little girl's shoulder. Harry went completely rigid. Diana leaned down close to his ear and said quietly, "She needs every piece of love we can give her. It is okay to touch her. She will not break, and neither will you." Harry kept his hand on the little girl's shoulder and did not move it for a long time. The little girl looked up at him the whole time without blinking, not smiling, just looking, making sure he was real. On the drive home, Diana told him, "Those are the people the world decided to forget. We do not forget them." Harry never let go of those words for the rest of his life. They became the private language between the two of them. The shared understanding of what it truly meant to see someone the world had already turned its back on completely. Subscribe to Royal Report Daily and stay ahead of every royal development. Then there were the letters. Every single week, without fail before Harry left for school, Diana wrote him a letter. A real handwritten letter folded carefully and tucked into his school bag. One every week across every year. Nobody told her to do it. Nobody else even knew it was happening. It was entirely between the two of them. And confirmed the detail that had never been made public. William did not receive the same letters with the same regularity. Diana loved both her boys completely and equally. There was never any question about that. But Harry was the one she lost sleep over. He was the one she prayed for specifically. She loved William deeply, but she never worried about William the way she worried about Harry. William would find his footing. William would hold himself together. Harry was different. Harry was the one she believed would lose his way the moment she was not there to guide him. So she wrote to him every week. Not to the prince, not to the royal, to her boy. To make sure he knew she was thinking about him. After she died, the letters stopped. One week they were folded carefully in his bag. And the following week, there was nothing. And there was never going to be anything again. Harry kept every single one across every year she wrote them. He has never shown them to a single person in his life. Not William. Not Meghan. Nobody. They are the most private thing he owns in the entire world. And the last letter she ever put in his bag before she died. Nobody in the world knows what it said except Harry. Hit that like button and subscribe to Royal Report Daily right now. Then said something about the morning nobody talks about. The official account said Charles came to both boys at 7 in the morning and told them their mother had died in Paris. But the hours before Charles opened that door were something else entirely. The staff had known before the boys were woken. The news came through in the very early hours, and the household had been quietly informed. Some of the staff were already crying in the back corridors, pressing themselves flat against walls, trying desperately to hold themselves together before the boys came out of their rooms. Harry woke on his own in those early hours. Something pulled him straight out of sleep. He got up and opened his bedroom door. The corridor was dark, mostly silent. But at the far end, a member of staff stood with their back flat against the wall, head dropped forward, shoulders shaking, crying without making any sound at all, just shaking silently in the dark. Harry stood in his doorway in his pajamas and watched. The staff member looked up, saw a 12-year-old boy standing there with wide eyes, and said in a carefully controlled voice, "Go back to bed. Everything is fine." Harry turned around and went back to his bed. He lay down and stared at the ceiling. And he already knew. Not the details, not Paris or the tunnel or any of what had actually happened. But he knew in the way a child knows things before any adult decides to say them out loud. In the way the body understands before the mind has any words to hold it. Something had happened to his mother. He lay there for 2 hours. 2 hours alone in the dark, waiting for the door to open and for someone to finally say out loud the thing he had been holding completely alone since before the sun came up over Balmoral. When Charles finally opened the door at 7 in the morning and sat on the edge of his bed with his face arranged into the expression of a man about to say something that could not be taken back, Harry already knew exactly what was coming. And Charles had absolutely no idea. Royal Report Daily, bringing you the complete truth behind every royal story. Then came the final thing. The thing Diana made and promised to hold back until the very end of this conversation. Whenever this conversation finally happened, Diana had been thinking about the war. The war she fought inside the institution that was supposed to be her home. The brutal choice between love and the crown, between being a full human being and being a compliant royal. She chose love. She chose honesty. She chose herself. And the institution made her bleed for every single one of those choices. And she could already see the exact same fire burning in Harry. She did not want him shielded from that war. She wanted him to fight it. She wanted him to make the choice. And when he did, when he stood up and chose what he wanted over protocol the way she had, she wanted him to know that his mother had made the exact same choice and would make it again without 1 second of hesitation. But Diana also said something else in that same breath. something that did not cancel the pride but sat right beside it. She said she hoped that when Harry fought, he would fight with enough care not to destroy what could never be rebuilt. She had fought this institution with everything she had, and she did not regret a single moment of it. But there were things she said in pain that she wished she had said differently. Things she did in anger that she wished she had done with more patience. She was not perfect in her war, and she did not want Harry to believe that fighting meant burning everything without looking at what was in the fire. Because what she was most afraid of losing was not a title, or a position, or a place in the line of succession. It was William. She was afraid Harry would lose William permanently, in the way that two people who have said too many unforgivable things to each other in public eventually stop being able to find the road back. She had watched this family sever bonds across generations over pride and protocol, and she could not bear the thought of her two boys becoming another one of those stories. She told, and that whatever happened, whatever Harry chose, and whatever it cost him, her one true hope was that he and William would find their way back to each other one day. Not for the palace, not for the public, just for themselves. For the two little boys who had held each other's hands walking behind her coffin in front of the entire world. She said that was the only thing that would give her complete peace. Harry sat there, and his whole body shook. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely there. He said he could have used this years ago. There were years when one sentence of it would have changed everything, and told him she knew, and she was sorry for every one of those years. But Diana made her promise. She made her swear not to deliver these words as comfort. She said to wait until the palace had already tried to break him and he was still standing. She said that was the only moment these words would land the way she needed them to land. Don't miss a single update. Subscribe to Royal Report Daily right now. Charles was at Balmoral in the summer of 1997. He was in the same building when Diana pulled him aside and said everything she said. He co-parented those boys with Diana through those years and had access to every single person she trusted. He could have asked, and at any point across those 29 years, what Diana said in those final weeks. He never asked once. When Harry was 15 and visibly falling apart, drowning in grief that nobody had ever given him any language to carry, Charles could have pulled him into a room and told him his mother saw him clearly. He said nothing. When Harry came back from Afghanistan carrying the private weight that soldiers drag home in their bodies, Charles could have sat beside his son and told him his mother would have been so proud. He said nothing. When the rupture with William became public and the silence between the brothers began hardening into something permanent, Charles had Diana's memory and Anne's number and 29 years of access to everything Harry desperately needed to hear. He could have been the bridge. He chose silence every single time and made one phone call, and she gave Harry something his father had 29 years and every possible opportunity to give him, and never once reached for. In the summer of 1997, just before Diana ended that conversation at Balmoral, she looked directly at and said something that and never forgot for a single day across all the years that followed. William would survive the palace. He was built for it. But Harry needed someone in his corner who would not let the institution crush him. She needed and to promise that person would be her. And promised. And she kept it when it mattered most. And somewhere in California, Diana's youngest son sat with the full weight of everything his mother had seen in him and understood about him and carried for him across 29 years. His mother had always known exactly who he was. She had seen his fire and his faults and his enormous breaking heart. And she had loved every part of it without condition. And she had made absolutely certain that even from 29 years away, her words would find him at the exact moment he needed them most. That was not memory. That was not coincidence. That was a mother who never stopped protecting her son, even from the other side of everything. This has been Royal Report Daily, bringing you the complete truth behind the most powerful royal stories of 2026. If this story moved you, if it gave you new perspective on Harry, on Diana, and on the bond that and has quietly protected for nearly 3 decades, please hit that like button right now. Subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Share this video with everyone who loved Princess Diana and believes her voice deserves to be heard. Turn on your notifications so you are always the first to know when we publish our next exclusive report. Because the story of what Diana saw in her son and what she asked and to carry for him until the right moment is one of the most remarkable acts of maternal love in the entire history of this royal family. And Royal Report Daily will be right here, honoring that story every step of the way. Stay informed, stay connected, and we will see you in our next report.